knows that the men who do not wish to fight for glory will only lower the morale of the other men. By stating that these men may lead, he essentially forces each man to fight happily. No man wants to appear weak in the eyes of his peers, and when Henry proclaims that, quote, "We would not die in the man's company that fears his fellowship to die with us," he transforms the action of abandoning the army into a cowardly act. Henry's ability to understand and motivate his men is a decisive factor in the battle. The outnumbered English could easily have lost if Henry had given a less effective or moving speech. Henry is able to use his knowledge gained from his vagabond friends to make his St. Crispin's Day address truly effective and moving. It is Henry's previous knowledge of the ideas typically held by commoners, his ability to adapt and sway public opinion, and the novel idea of using a disguise that makes his St. Crispin's Day speech successful. Prince Hal's sense of humor surfaces in King Henry as well, a fact that makes King Henry more humane and likable. When Henry dons his disguise to talk to the soldiers, he meets a soldier named Williams, who voices a rather derisive opinion of King Henry. Since Henry is in disguise, Williams does not realize that he is actually talking to the king. Henry decides to push the point with Williams, and the two exchange gloves as a sign of an official quarrel. After the battle, the gloves will enable the two to recognize each other so that they may settle their argument if they both live. After the battle, Henry recognizes Williams and decides to play a trick on him. He gives Williams' glove to Llewellyn, a Welsh captain, and tells Llewellyn that any man who challenges the glove is a traitor. Williams challenges Llewellyn and is brought before Henry as a traitor. Henry reveals himself as the man with whom Williams exchanged gloves. Williams argues that he is not at fault for, quote, "Your Majesty came not like yourself. What your Highness suffered under that shape, I beseech you to take for your own fault and not mine, for had you been as I took you for, I made no offense." Henry admires Williams for sticking to his point and, instead of punishing him, orders the glove to be filled with crowns. The playful side of Henry, though perhaps little appreciated by Williams at the time, serves both as comic relief and connects him to the younger Henry, who frequently played tricks on his friends, particularly Falstaff. A more human, less robotic side of Henry is also revealed through his humor. Unlike other kings, Henry seems to have retained a sense of himself as a person, a quality that makes him seem all the more admirable. Though Henry embraces elements of his own life, he seems to have completely disconnected himself from the people who were once considered his friends. Falstaff, perhaps the most infamous of Henry's friends, dies without ever appearing on stage during Henry V. Henry is not present at Falstaff's death and never appears to mourn the man who once seemed to have a significant relationship with Henry. Falstaff's absence on the stage and the contradictions that surround his last words reflect Henry's emotional separation from Falstaff. Since Henry was not present at Falstaff's death, any word that reached him of the death would have been hearsay. Falstaff is not the only friend that Henry seems to have cast off. Bardolph, Nym, and Pistol are all in Henry's army when he marches into France. Bardolph is the first of Henry's friends to die in France, though he does not die on the battlefield. Bardolph is caught looting a church and, subsequently punished. The penalty for looting is death. Henry, when told of his death, does not betray any emotion and praises the reporting officer for his decisive action, saying, quote, "We would have all offenders so cut off." Nym is later reported to have been hanged for the same reason as Bardolph. Henry's refusal to acknowledge his previous relationship with these men suggests that he has cut as many ties as possible with his old life. Though his actions can be interpreted as cold-hearted, Henry may simply be striving to live up to his role as king. If Henry were to cut any of his friends a break, they would all expect some sort of support from him. As king, Henry cannot afford to be associated with thieves in any way. If Henry is to continue to cultivate a positive relationship with his subjects, he must separate himself from any reminder of his past, as well as any indication that he might be immoral. Supporting vagabonds and letting them off of sentences that continue to apply to the rest of the population is not a good way to cultivate popularity. Since public support is part of what keeps Henry on his throne, Henry has no choice but to completely reject any sort of association with his old friends. Another aspect of King Henry that separates him from his character as a prince is his newfound sense of fairness. As a prince, Henry protected his thieving friends and was able to delay the arrest of Falstaff. None of Henry's friends appealed to him for this service. Henry chose to let his friends go free, even though they clearly participated in criminal activities. As a king, Henry demonstrates a clear sense of fairness and justice when he is confronted with a plot by 3 English noblemen, Cambridge, Grey, and Scrope, to take his life. Henry summons the men and presents them with a simple case. A drunkard has been arrested for slandering the king's name. Henry asks for the nobleman's advice on the matter. Each nobleman says that Henry should punish the man, though Henry suggests a merciful path. Henry then hands the noblemen papers that inform them he knows them to be traitors. The noblemen immediately appeal to his mercy. Henry rebukes the men, saying, quote, "The mercy that was quick in us but late, by your own counsel is suppressed and killed. You must not dare, for shame, to talk of mercy." Henry demonstrates both cunning and a surprising ability for mercy by asking the noblemen for their opinion before revealing his knowledge of their betrayal. His order for the nobleman's execution is doubly justified because of their words as well as their actions. Henry's sense of justice is something that he does not reveal until he is crowned. As a king, Henry is powerful and capable, though he spent much of his youth in questionable company. Henry is successful in forging the skills needed to become an admirable leader. However, since Henry spends so much time with his vagabond friends in parts 1 and 2 of King Henry IV, and not much time studying up and practicing to be king, 2 suggestions present themselves. First, though Henry learned many skills and tricks from his friends, he may have also learned what not to do. As the saying goes, there's no honor among thieves. By watching Falstaff's various successes and failures at leading the vagabonds, Henry may have learned to become even more charismatic and clever than his old mentor by learning from Falstaff's mistakes. The second idea that puts itself forward is that Henry may have had all of these abilities innately. Henry's soliloquy in part 1 of Henry IV, where he explains his public relations plan, comes to mind. Quote, "And like bright metal on a sullen ground, my reformation, glittering over my fault, shall show more goodly and attract more eyes than that which hath no foil to set it off." Henry's choice to make himself out as immature may have worked on the audience as well as the characters in the play, fooling everyone,